we got to talk about what happened last night. What happened last night was Chris Beard said he hit a grand slam over the summer with Tyrese Hunter. Texas boat race Gonzaga. You do not see Gonzaga. I don't care if the game's played on Mars. You don't see Gonzaga get commanded, get really dominated on a night. They got blitzed. Yeah. Was it more to you? This is the hard question, John Henson. Was it more to you that Gonzaga's got more concerns than they've had in recent years, or that Texas should be regarded as a legitimate Final Four candidate this season?
All right, so I'm gonna bounce back to Randolph and say, all right, it's early, right? It's early, but Gonzaga struggled against Michigan State as well. The guard play is a little shaky. They got what we call our traditional big, and a traditional big one can't really carry the squad. You got to have guard play, and I think that was the difference of the game. Shout out to Dylan Mitchell, Tampa kid, man. I hope he plays well this year, man. That's my guy, you know what I'm saying? So he was on my AAU program, so I love Texas. I love everything they have going on. Beard has kind of sunken his claws into that program, and as you saw last night, I think they're primed. The Texas we've seen the last few years, they play well, and then they midway through the season they kind of fall off, and so hopefully they keep going, man.
John, the guard play is concerning because they got punked, but I don't want to overrate it as much. There's talent there, and Texas played. I mean, the reason I said it is because Hunter, Tyrese Hunter was great last night. He played. I mean, he played out of his mind, but he hasn't been that. You're talking about a guy that shot 27% from three a year ago, right? And if you look at his stats and you say, oh man, if you look up right now and be like, oh, he's shooting 40%. Well, he's shooting 40% because he made 5 threes yesterday. Right. Going into yesterday's game, he was 1 for 7. Right. So which guy am I gonna get? Do I think he's improved? I do. I don't worry about him defensively. Mm-hmm. I'm just worrying about him consistently knocking down jump shots like he did last night. I mean, last night he looked like Steph Curry out there at one point. The way he was and I'm joking about it, but seriously, I think now again, you can't take anything away from him. I'm just saying there's not that much of a. I'm not gonna panic with Gonzaga because they do have a difference making Drew Timme.
Yes.
They just sped their guards up. They sped those guards up, and I think there's some depth there, man. There's some quality guys. Malachi Smith is an experienced guard there. They need to get him in and maybe try to force feed Timme in a different way. They just outworked them, man. They just played harder. They were the tougher team, and their guard play, man, they kicked Gonzaga's ass.
Maybe, Gonzaga coming into this tournament season with a couple of notches on their belt and not 31-0 or 29-1 can help them. Because personally, when I was playing, the years that we were the best, we lost early, man, and it was kind of an eye opener for us, a humbling experience. And we started to listen, right? And we started to kind of come together as a team. And so maybe that's kind of what goes on with them. They got another big game coming up, obviously. So I love they're going at these heavy hitters, but they got to win one.
Well, they have to because they know when they get in the conference, no one in their conference can replicate the athletes and everything that they're going through right now. So they have to do this because they are talented and they are a national championship contender. And they need to play against these teams, one, for like you talked about. So coach can say, hey, I've told you this, to get their ear, because when they get in the conference play, they're going to lose 2 games max when they get in the conference play?
Max. And now you have Kentucky on Sunday. That's now a fascinating game because here you have Kentucky earlier this week. I see John shaking his head like, what went wrong there? Losing to Michigan State in a game that they should have won. Like Sunday, Timme versus Sheboygan. But here's the deal. In that game. Like, when I look at Gonzaga, and I think I heard of in both your voices, Jalen Suggs isn't walking through that door, and Andrew Nembhard's not walking through that door. Like right now, that backcourt, and to me, it's probably got to be Malachi Smith because of his experience level, but the playmaking side there, and it goes back to Michigan and Gonzaga. The more you look at it, might be similar just by virtue of the guard play is not in rhythm at this stage of the season.
Yeah, and I think that's just another factor of them figuring out who they are, right? You don't want to figure out who you are in a, Sweet 16, right? And what you need in coming, because I think that's what Gonzaga has been done. National championship they played against Baylor. They ain't never seen no boys like that, right? Years before, same thing. So I think those guards will figure it out. They're better than they're showing, in my personal opinion. And them coming up against these blue chip guys that they see on the 5-star rankings, I think is only going to help them, later in the season. I think they'll be fine. I think Kentucky is going to be a real test for them. Obviously, Tshiebwe, Timmy. I would say National Player of the Year matchup, but they both got some work to do, especially with their teams being need to be win.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, this goes a long way. Whoever plays well and whoever wins this game goes a long way toward them winning it, because Timmy will bounce back. He's going to put up monster numbers.
Yep.
And John, going back to what we talked about before with the bigs, when you have a big like Timmy and those guys, if that guy isn't playing great, if he isn't dominating, you're putting him in ball screens and you're attacking him on the defensive end of the floor. And Timmy's not a great defender in space. So if you have to play through him better, and they have to do a better job of letting him touch the ball just to control the pace and he's an efficient scorer. I mean, last night he was 7 of 10. He just needs to touch the ball to get more shots. If you don't feed a big, when you have a dominant big like Hunter Dickinson and Drew Timme, like those guys, if you're not feeding him the ball, on the other team is attacking him. You're putting him in DHOs, dribble handoffs. I'm doing everything I can to get him out get him away from the basket, and he's spending so much energy on that. So you got to get those bigs going early. I mean, credit to Texas last night. Their guard play, they just mangled them, and they will fix that. We know they will, but you got to get Timmy the ball more.
You're right. Yeah, you don't use those bigs. They're used. I mean, they become almost like you say, useless.
Become
almost,
a liability
right?
in that aspect because they just guard.
Because it's like, all right, we don't have him down there banging, collapsing the defense, getting those things going. And when you don't have that going and he's just, running up and down the court doing sprints, it's not good for anybody. You know what I'm saying?
You know what happens, John? And you can say this, and this happened in that Texas game. When a big touches the ball enough, when the extra guys start coming, and they're coming for him, they're willing to pass it. But when you don't get it, then you find yourself trying to force it through the double team, which Timmy did a few times last night, trying to go up, got called, got some turnovers that way. And again, if he gets it early, I think he'll be more reluctant to kick it out, find guys, better spacing. And I would say that about all those bigs. I mean, they're really big, really good offensive guys, but you're going to attack them on the defensive end. And the way you're going to attack them is just attack their guards.
I used to say, this is NBA, but it's still the same thing. When Steven Adams, if they didn't feed him early, he was a lot easier to handle for the rest of the night.
Oh, it is. I mean, it is with every. But think about it. It's that way with every big, because the one thing about a big is not a low post scoring big needs help getting the ball. And like I said, he got frustrated last night, and Timmy had 5 turnovers last night. He led him in turnovers, and it's because after a while you're trying to force it, because you hadn't gotten a lot of touches. And that's something in his experience. He's trying to do more, and they'll figure it out. They're just too talented not to. So I'm not overly concerned about him. The question will be is after that Kentucky game, whoever loses that game, are you kidding me?
Ooh.
I know.
Perry tried to warn us. He tried to warn us, though. He said this team isn't ready. He put out the tweet. He said, we're not ready, man. Don't worry about us.
Yeah. You're the coach of Kentucky, okay? You brought back the reigning National Player of the Year. Don't tell me you're not ready. Enough.
John, I can tell you this, John. When we were at Champions Classic, the Kentucky fan base don't want to hear that shit either.
Yeah,
they don't want to hear it.
Man.
I know they. I'm just look. This is what he said, so that's kind of what.
Okay, Henson. Wait a minute. If you told a Carolina fan in November, we're just not ready. We're not ready.
Hey, I might tell them off camera, not on Twitter though.
Hey, they don't want the Tar Heels don't want to hear that either. They don't want to hear. We're not ready to defend. We're not ready to make a run at the night with Armando Bacot and Love and RJ Davis.
Hey.
You got half the damn first team All ACC on a team that was 1 rebound from winning the Natty. Don't nobody want to hear that.
Hey, especially when our best player is 7-figure guy, man. We don't want to hear that, man. You know what I'm saying?